What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, everyone. Today, guys, I got a really exciting episode of the show. We got a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about here today. Talk about a little bit some movie stuff to start off the show. Then we got, of course, gaming stuff. Once again, we're going to be talking a little bit about some Dead Space as well as some StarCraft news. We're going to continue with Call of Duty, and then we'll kind of wrap up the show talking about the Xbox Series X and, of course, the recent announcement of the PlayStation 5. And so we're going to be talking about all those things here today, and I'm excited to get into that. Before we continue, though, guys, I want to... I got someone who's going to be kind of sharing the stage with me for this episode. And it's the very first person who's going to be a co-host or a co-star on the show, and I'm really excited about it. His name is Cruiser, and he's a gamer, and he is very well versed in number of different games and such. And I've wanted, and I've been telling you guys for a while, that I was going to have a co-star on the show at some point or another, and that I plan on doing it more and more as we go throughout the course of the 8 Below Show's history. And so he's the first co-star, and he's going to be giving his opinions and you know, some of his takes on some of the stuff that we're talking about here tonight. And I'm excited to bring him into the show. So what's up, Cruiser?
Oh, not much. Thanks for having me on. I'm itching to talk about some video games and other stuff. So
Yeah, definitely, dude. It's been a while since I've wanted to have you on the show, and it's been one of those things we've been talking about in the past, guys. And just to give you a little quick history on Frankie, so Frankie or Cruiser, guys, you can pretty much call him either or, and of course you'll be able to. We'll have all of his information and such in the description down below, but. We met through, essentially, guys, he was a co-owner of a team called Outcast, a esports organization and gaming team, and I was really interested in considering the possibility of joining Outcast. And so what ended up happening was we ended up having like an interview, or we had like a Discord chat with myself, him, as well as Cruiser and the other co-owner of Outcast. And just after meeting them, really, I was like, man, these guys seem like just, you know, really into the gaming industry. And that was something that was really cool. And then we ended up playing a good amount of Fortnite together. And then we also played some Black Ops 4. And so we've been kind of in and out of each other's lives through the gaming scene. But nonetheless, guys, let me tell you one thing. When it comes to Cruiser, he really knows a lot about just gaming in general, and he's really into all of that. But the first topic, though, guys, as we begin here tonight, as I said, we're going to be talking a little bit about Collider and Collider movie talk in particular, and that's going to kind of kick off the show. So let's get into it. So, guys, Collider Movie Talk. This is a company in which I had been actually following for quite some time. They did a number of different shows on their YouTube channel regarding around movies and such. And for those of you who are just new to the show and don't know much about me, I'm very in tune with what's going on in the filmmaking industry. I went to school for filmmaking, and so this was a channel that was, when I was in film school, was a channel that a lot of us were watching on a regular basis because they did news and such. It's similar to those of you who are in the gaming industry. They're kind of like an IGN, but for filmmaking. And so we really were just watching a lot of their shows. They had this very popular show called Collider Movie Talk. They had a panel of about 4 or 5 people. They would sometimes have guests on there, like directors or actors and actresses, and they would talk about everything in the world of movies. They would be talking about what movies are coming out that current week in theaters, to a number of different things, right? Well, anyways, Collider decided to drop a number of their shows, and one of those being Collider Movie Talk, which was really tough for me to experience because I really liked watching their show, and they decided to move away from this to do other different types of content on their channel. Let's just put it that way. And I understand that the numbers weren't there as they used to be with Collider Movie Talk. But it was just really unfortunate the way in which they went about doing things. Collider decided just to drop a bunch of their people from these shows that were actually pretty iconic shows without giving them any warning at all. And so it was one of those things, guys, like it just kind of like, it hurts to a degree to watch one of those, one of your favorite like movie talk shows ends up, or just anything, whether we're talking like entertainment in general, like when something like that happens where they're just people get like dropped from something who have significant amounts of talent, which by the way, I'm sure a lot of the people who did Collider Movie Talk aren't going to, have any trouble getting another job. But it's really an unfortunate thing watching something like that happen. I've seen it all the time in gaming. I've seen it a lot in the gaming industry, seen it a lot in the movie industry as well. Just those things really shouldn't happen in our current times in 2020. It shouldn't be happening the way in which it is, but it does. And it's really unfortunate. And, I'm not going to say that Collider lost my support completely because they dropped Movie Talk, but they're doing a lot of other different types of content now, things that, like they have a show called For Your Consideration, which of course they're still talking about movies, they still talk about TV shows and such, but it's just a little bit different. And I think it all comes down to, so really what happened to Collider Movie Talk, the idea is that Movie Talk wasn't getting the numbers it used to when guys like John Campea and John Schnepp, may his soul rest in peace, but when they were a part of the show, it had really great just the amount of exposure they were getting in views and such. And they were all about content, whereas, the CEO of Collider apparently had other ideas for where he wanted to go, and that's why John Campea ended up leaving the show. So it just ended up kind of being somewhat of a mess. And it's really unfortunate because I believe Collider was pretty much one of the best as far as movie channels out there on YouTube. Now, Frankie, you're not really versed in Collider and Movie Talk and such. I basically just, told you about them the other day. But I mean, maybe if you can think of a scenario like in the gaming industry, because there's been a number of times I've usually seen in kind of the gaming industry where people, whether they're part of a development team or whatever the case might be. I mean, I'll give you an example. We're going to be talking about Dead Space, and Visceral Games got completely just shut down. So these things happen all the time. But I wanted to mention you, what do you think about just developers? Or, even just whether we're talking developers or in the movie industry, people just getting dropped or, fired out of nowhere and basically being told that they don't even have a job. Like, what are your thoughts on this as a whole?
Well, as far as the gaming industry, I mean, it's unfortunate when that stuff happens. I mean, another one I can think of off the top of my head is Telltale Games, which was a studio that made a lot. Like, I think I have played through at least 15 of their games, and there were new ones coming out that I was excited for. So it's unfortunate. And then the thing on top of that is then you also find out like the bad practices that they were keeping and not giving them benefits or severance or anything like that. And when things like that happen, it's tough and unfortunate. But as far as like shows getting canceled and changed up, I can relate. Like I watch. I don't know if you've ever heard of Kind of Funny Games. They sort of do a bunch of different segments.
Right.
They like to shift stuff around, and even IGN. Like I listen to like their Xbox podcast all the time, and at one point they didn't even shut it down, but like they decided to change the format to only audio, where I watch it on YouTube, and even that was big change for me because I looked forward every week to watching it. They're not doing anything special necessarily, but just seeing their presence, at a table and them talking and stuff.
Well, even like Machinima. You remember like with Machinima, I don't know if you watched a lot of Machinima, but like they were, I mean, geez, they kind of feel like they were like almost the pioneers in a lot of senses. I mean, that's how I saw guys like Zer Grizz and like all the content he was making in Call of Duty. And I mean, there was a lot of guys who were doing like top 10 plays and top 5s and stuff on Machinima. And then all of a sudden, Machinima gets just completely, dropped, or like they delete. I think it was they deleted the channel. I believe I can't quite remember, but anyway, I mean, it was just stuff like that. I mean, it's just so many years of content. I remember seeing Energy Hex. I remember Hex talking about it a little bit and how it was really unfortunate that it was just so much content that was now lost, or just completely disappeared off the face of the earth. It was really an unfortunate ordeal, but. Did you watch any Machinima stuff?
I didn't really get into it, but I remember when it all happened and they shut it down, and yeah, I do remember them saying like all those old videos and like history and people that worked for them before and had their videos up. It was just like suddenly all of that just wiped from the internet, unless maybe that some of the people probably have source or their original files or whatever, but still. It's just weird to think that for so long, so many fans watched all that, and then suddenly it's all gone.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. But anyways, guys, I definitely want to hear from all of you out there. What are your thoughts on the unfortunate things that have happened within gaming, the unfortunate things that have happened within, just movies as well, like just the filmmaking industry? And this situation in particular, Collider Movie Talk, and it getting completely dropped amongst other shows being canceled over at Collider. What are your thoughts about it? Let me know in the comment section below. Okay, so Dead Space, guys, a game in which one of my favorite horror games or horror franchises when it comes to the gaming industry. And for those of you guys who, once again, are kind of new to my channel, I'm obviously really into filmmaking, but I'm really, when I was doing filmmaking and making short films and such, it was always based around horror, movies and short films. And so I really have a passion, and it's like just something I really enjoy is playing games that are on the scary side, I guess you could say, or kind of horror based. Gears of War would be probably a good example of a game that's somewhat like a horror-esque kind of game. But Dead Space is one that is completely 100% delved into the horror genre and is definitely labeled that. Well, anyways, Dead Space, guys, we, of course, have had 3 games up to this point, and there's been no word of there being like a sequel. There actually has been talks of maybe it could have a return at some point or another, but at this very point, it seems pretty much that it's in a limbo state. There's really not a lot of news or information. Well, an article that I came up across was from Gaming Bolt. A guy named John Canties wrote this article about Dead Space, and it goes as follows. One of the best horror franchises of its time is now little more than a distant memory. What happened? So fans of survival horror didn't have a lot of modern choices in the previous gaming generation. Resident Evil 4 had come and gone a few years earlier, and outside of a handful of mostly unremarkable underground experiences available here and there, which mostly limited the PC, it was slim pickings for us horror fans before Amnesia came out and revived the genre and elevated it to the glorious relevance we find it at today. But there was one game developer that saw that void and wanted to fill it with something special. So in 2008, Dead Space blasted and dismembered its way onto the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC via Visceral Games. So it goes on to say, guys, that Dead Space, it featured a mix of of gore, a lot of disturbing imagery, but it was very different. And I gotta say, guys, there was some very unnerving elements of the game. That being like you would be walking down very narrow hallways. You would kill like a necromorph that was in front of you, and then you would turn your camera around because it was a third-person shooter horror game, and you would see that there was something behind you, and things of that nature made it very unnerving. The game also increased immersion by displaying stats on or around Isaac within the world, eliminating the need for much of a HUD at all. Dead Space never tried to be pure horror, though, and definitely straddled the line between horror and action, as many survival games do. But it did lean heavily in the horror direction, contrasting itself from most similar games of the time. So basically why after the series gained so much momentum in such a short period of time did the Dead Space completely fall off the map. Essentially, what happened to Dead Space? Well, part of the answer to this is probably embedded in that criticism of the third game, which of course he kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. Dead Space was an overall solid series that did sell and review well across the board, but the once perfectly balanced horror to action ratio did see a very slight gradual slide toward action through the main trilogy. In Dead Space 2, it was barely even noticeable, as the mechanics and gameplay from the first game was almost entirely untouched outside of Isaac controlling a little snappier and ammo being made a little more plentiful. Isaac was more of a character in Dead Space 2 as well, and actually had dialogue, which some players liked as it made him easier to care about, but others disliked as it demystified the tone of the game and divided focus away from the atmosphere. Either way, these changes, while subtle, did make Dead Space 2 feel a little more like a typical sequel than a return to the strange cryptic experience of the original. So, okay. So what he's saying here, guys, essentially is that really there was changes that happened between Dead Space and Dead Space 2. I kind of disagree with that. And I'll get what Cruiser thinks about this here in a sec, but I really think that it was actually 2 to 3. I think that 3 was really where it kind of changed. The second one I thought was actually it topped the first one, in my opinion, as far as the horror elements go. I thought that they kind of knew what they were doing by the time they got to Dead Space 2. And when they went to Dead Space 3, that's where things changed. It felt a little like they were kind of going a little more into the action segment, or kind of moving more into an action game over that of a horror game. But really, all in all, guys, in my opinion, and obviously it's just my opinion, we are all allowed to have our opinion, I actually think that what really, the problem with Dead Space was more that they kind of were a little bit behind the trends of what was going on in the gaming industry. So back then, guys, the thing was multiplayer was starting to get pretty big, and Dead Space and games kind of like it really lacked having any type of multiplayer experience, and let alone co-op. And we didn't get a co-op Dead Space game until Dead Space 3, which felt a little bit too little too late sort of kind of mindset for a lot of people. I also think, though, that what ended up, happening was they went a little bit away from what made the game great in Dead Space 3, making it more of an action-esque type of game. It's really unfortunate because I thought that Dead Space 1, Dead Space 2 were incredible. Dead Space 3 I thought was good, but it was definitely far inferior to the first two. But I think that there's a ton of potential here. If they were to make another one, a Dead Space 4, I really feel that this could be, it could really rejuvenate and revitalize the franchise, in my opinion, with having a multiplayer, a co-op mode, and a good immersive story. I think a lot of us would love to see the continuation of it. Cruiser, you hear these things, you hear kind of what one man's thoughts is, in this article, and then you hear kind of my opinion on what I think kind of happened with the Dead Space franchise. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think that that this is a franchise that, really should just kind of stay to the wayside, doesn't need to come back, or would you like to see it come back? And where do you think they kind of went wrong?
Well, so I jumped into the series after all 3 were out, and what happened was I actually ended up just grinding the first 2, and I really, really liked them. And then I got to the third one, and I had kind of known some reviews, and I ended up never playing it. So I can't really give my thoughts on the third one. The first 2 I loved, and I think it came down to them working on, because I want to say they were working on a Star Wars game, right? When they were shut down, it was actually supposed to be a really good Star Wars game.
Yeah, so I think I'm pretty sure that they were working on something. It was definitely Star Wars. It was like an untitled Star Wars project, but yeah, got completely shut down. I believe it was by EA, who was the ones who I believe owned them, and they shut down the studio while they were right in the middle of making the project.
Yeah, which seemed kind of odd because I mean, there was just a little bit of concept, and everyone was really hyped around that game. But either way, I kind of think that they would have gone back to it had it not shut down. I think it was more of a just like sidestep. Hey, now we're trying to do Star Wars. I mean, when you think about it, EA really has not done a lot with the Star Wars franchises. So I think it was more like, hey, we got to push out a different kind of style of game for that. And then maybe they would have gone back. And now that the studio is gone, it's sort of up in limbo. But, you know, I mean, they just recently announced Vince Zampella is going to be taking over the DICE LA studio and like rebranding it and everything. I mean, that would almost be a perfect opportunity to jump back in to something like Dead Space. And when you look at someone like Vince Zampella, who's basically made nothing but good games, it kind of gets me excited if that would be a possibility of them making a new Dead Space. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I feel like there's definitely room for a new game like that, and I think there's enough fans. I mean, they made 3 games. It's not like there wasn't a fan base for it, and I know a lot of people that especially love those first 2 games. So I think it's something that we're gonna see eventually from somewhere. I don't know if it's gonna be that new studio or what, but
yeah, I mean, I would love to see it. I feel, to me, it feels like it definitely can coexist with these other games that are out there. And I mean, we look at, there's single player games that have come out that are only single player that have done really well, like God of War, that amazing what was it? Yeah, the Spider-Man game. There's been games that have come out that can, that can be successful by just being a single player story. The problem with Dead Space is it's horror, and the horror genre is a little bit different. It's probably not as popular as some of these like action games and such, and that's probably why they were thinking, let's go in a direction of action. I just don't even think that was it. That was the problem. The problem to me was that sure, you're moving away from horror, but the big thing is that you don't have a reason for people to come back to the game. You don't have a multiplayer. You don't have, you got co-op, but you don't have other modes. Like, you think of Gears of War, or you think of Call of Duty, you think of games that are big AAA games, they have multiple reasons to come back to. You play the campaign once or twice through, then you come back, you play the multiplayer, which is what you mainly are going to probably be playing. Or you have like other, co-op modes and such, like Horde mode in Gears, or Spec Ops in COD, or Zombies in COD, or it would be so easy, in my opinion, to do something like that with Dead Space, because you got all these different kinds of creatures, and like, imagine like a Horde mode in Dead Space. I mean, that would be nuts. I mean, I think it would be really cool having something like that. Would you want to see something like that? Like, because it reminds me somewhat like the creatures and stuff kind of sometimes, some of them at least, look similar to like some of the creatures in like Gears or some of the other horror games that are out there. I mean, do you think that they could expand upon like what they're working with it? Like, do you think that they could, I feel like they could easily do something, and I agree with you with Vince Zampella. I mean, this guy is like really, he seems like a genius when it comes to just gaming in general, as game development goes. I mean, we're talking Modern Warfare 2 being one of the creators of, Modern Warfare, and then moves on to do Titanfall, and then you had Call of Duty, like basically over at Activision, those guys were like copying kind of what he's doing with Titanfall, and they create the jetpack era in Call of Duty, and now he's, into Apex Legends, into, the new Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Like, he's really got his handprint in that stuff. I mean, I would feel absolutely great if he had access and control of what was going on with Dead Space. I don't know if that's what he's thinking. I feel like he's going to try to do like bigger spectacle stuff, but if he did, I would feel really good about it. But do you think that Dead Space, they could easily like probably do like modes that would keep people coming back, whether you're talking, even if it's not multiplayer, like some type of co-op mode that you're mowing down waves of necromorphs or something, right?
Yeah, they could definitely do something like that. I mean, and then you look at like, I mean, I want to say God. I don't know for sure God of War, but I know like Spider-Man, they have those Game Plus modes where you basically replay with like I don't know different things going on in the game, or like I think sometimes you keep like what you've unlocked through the first playthrough, so it kind of gives you a reason to play through again, maybe being a little beefier, and maybe encourages exploring different areas and stuff like that that you didn't hit in the first playthrough. So even something like that at least gives you a little bit of an incentive to go, gives it some replayability.
Right. Yeah, well, listen, guys, these are a couple of people's thoughts on this situation as to what happened to Dead Space. I mean, when you really think of the question as in what happened to Dead Space, there's probably a number of different things that could have been, that could have happened, or that could have kind of tied into the reasoning Dead Space right now is in a limbo state. But we would love to hear from all of you. What are your thoughts about Dead Space? Would you like to see the series come back? And do you think that Dead Space, if it were to come back, it would be somewhat successful? Do you think they need to continue onwards or move in a direction that they were kind of left off on, as in an action kind of genre where they're trying to move in that direction? Or do you think they need to stick to the roots of horror? Let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear your thoughts. Okay, guys, so some really big news happened with StarCraft 2, and I'm sure you've already heard a lot of the news that's gone down, so I'm not going to read a lot of this stuff word for word that ended up happening to StarCraft 2. Some really great news, because in the past, guys, past probably few years, if you've been in the StarCraft 2 community, you would know that there's been a significant worry or concern that the StarCraft 2 pro scene would be canceled at some point. And for those of you who are somewhat new to what's been going on with Blizzard in the last few years, a game that had a lot of promise, known as Heroes of the Storm, actually had their esports scene completely cut. And there's a number of reasons why that most likely happened. We're not really going to get too much into that here right now, but a lot of us in the StarCraft community were kind of concerned that, hey, if they're going to pull the plug on Heroes of the Storm, would they do the same thing with StarCraft? And I made a video talking about how I didn't think that that would happen, because StarCraft has been a game that's proven itself. It has a very passionate fan base, but you just never know. So every year we always wonder, we're always waiting to hear news about the pro circuit. And with that said, the news that came out couldn't have been better for StarCraft 2, really. In an article that was written, of course, by StarCraft, the exciting future of StarCraft 2 esports. For almost 10 years, StarCraft 2 esports has stood as the epitome of competition and community in the esports world. We are excited to share with you the next era of StarCraft 2 esports, ESL, and DreamHack. Together with Blizzard, we'll establish a brand new competitive circuit for the next 3 years of StarCraft 2 esports. So what is happening to StarCraft 2 esports? After 7 amazing years and following Dark's incredible global finals victory at BlizzCon, the World Championship Series is being retired. The WCS mobile app will be shut down on December 31st, 2019, and the WCS site will be taken down in early 2020. WCS has been a huge part of the StarCraft 2 community, and we know just how much it has meant to you all as it has to us. But rest assured, StarCraft 2 esports is evolving, respawning in a new form with ESL and DreamHack. To replace WCS, we are excited to announce the new ESL Pro Tour StarCraft 2 and DreamHack SC2 Masters. The two will combine to create the new SC2 esports circuit moving forward. ESL and DreamHack have been trusted vendor for Blizzard esports, particularly StarCraft 2, for many years. We know that this amazing community is in incredible hands. So, right there, guys. ESL and, of course, DreamHack taking over. Now, it's very sad to me to see the WCS leave. A lot of people were asking me, my thoughts on this whole thing, and the WCS, it's sad that we're losing the World Championship of StarCraft, because it really felt like that, especially at BlizzCon each year, which the championship, the global finals, the Super Bowl of StarCraft is no longer at BlizzCon. It's now going to be at IEM Katowice, which I Am Katowice every single year is, I've noticed at the Esports Awards, it's always pretty much one of the top events or one of the nominated events. It's that good. And that leads me to this next part. The global finals will shift to the new I Am Katowice World Championship in 2021. This means SC2 Esports at BlizzCon will look different in the future, but it will still be there, and we will share more details about how that will look later. So, overall, guys, I mean, I'm excited about this because the big thing is 3 years. You've got 3 years now of StarCraft 2 esports, right? I mean, you got 3 more years. All those guys who have, are commentators, are casters or pro players, they've got a job for the next 3 years, basically, because this is a contract with ESL and DreamHack. And let me tell you this. ESL, DreamHack are very good at what they do. These guys do a really good job at promoting their tournaments, promoting the games that are at those tournaments. So pretty much what they're going to be, I think the 3 main games that they're going to be doing is StarCraft 2, CSGO, and Warcraft 3, which are 3 pretty OG games, to say the least, that they're going to be kind of featured. And I'm really excited about this because I feel like Blizzard, even though I love Blizzard, very close to my heart. They are a company that a lot of their talent seems to be kind of moving in a direction of, they're trying to work on Overwatch and Overwatch 2, World of Warcraft, and, the Overwatch League, and, they're just working on other stuff. StarCraft is kind of not like a distant memory, but it's just they're not really focused as much on StarCraft as we would be accustomed to, or what we would expect or hope for. Now, that being said, I have a theory, and we'll get to it later, as to what Blizzard might be doing actually during this time that they have more hands on deck. As far as, they aren't doing the StarCraft 2 tournaments. That doesn't mean they're not working on StarCraft. So that is something that we'll have to talk about here later on in the show. But Frankie, when you hear, about kind of the change here, as far as I know that you don't play StarCraft a lot, but when you hear about, what's been kind of going on at Blizzard, and I know you've heard some of the stuff that's been going on with Blizzard. We all have seen the past few BlizzCons and how I think that this past year's in 2019 was pretty good. But we know what happened a couple years ago with Diablo Immortal. We know that there's things changing. Heroes of the Storm getting their esports scene completely canceled out of nowhere. People losing their jobs once again. What are your thoughts on, the reasoning why they're doing this? Is it that they just don't want to focus on StarCraft as much? They want to focus more on Overwatch and other titles? What do you make of this news, even though you're not super involved in the StarCraft community?
Yeah, I mean, my thought is, for a game as old as StarCraft 2 at this point, if they don't want to support it, at least they are handing it off to someone else who will, and at least keeping it alive. I think it's probably really disappointing for like the hardcore fans, the ones that go to BlizzCon and probably want to be there to see the tournaments or even the players and stuff. But at very least, they're not just saying, "Hey, it's shut down. See you later." They're at least carrying it on. And hopefully they are just, like you said, maybe going to focus on different things and, look into the future and just kind of strengthening their esports. I mean, because Blizzard does have a lot of different esports stuff going on. They have a lot of games. So, maybe they just want to tighten up and make what they have the best possible experience. And to do that, they sort of need to shift focus from the other ones.
Right. And you mentioned how it's a really old game. I mean, it's basically StarCraft 2 is basically like a pioneer in esports. I mean, I know StarCraft 1, a lot of people point to that as well. StarCraft 2, a lot of people say that if StarCraft 2 never happened, a lot of esports games or titles would have never happened. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think it was probably the first true esports title that they kind of, when MLG was partnering with Blizzard for StarCraft 2, and you had Halo, and then those tournaments, I mean, were absolutely nuts. I remember those days. What's interesting about this is later in the article, it says, as DreamHack and ESL take over the operational management of StarCraft 2 esports, we will serve as an overall support network for the new system. For instance, Blizzard will be providing the prizing for all 3 years of this new ecosystem, more than US $1.2 million each year. To celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the release of StarCraft 2, the 2020-2021 ESL DreamHack circuit will have a larger combined prize pool of more than $1.9 million. Back in October, we announced the return of StarCraft 2 to IEM Katowice with an initial prize pool of $250,000, and we are thrilled to share that we are increasing that prize pool to $400,000 on top of our 2020-2021 commitment. So obviously, Blizzard is putting up some money here. And that's interesting to me because they're kind of stepping away somewhat, but they're putting up a bigger prize pool, which is really interesting to me. And I'm kind of wondering why they're doing that. Just because maybe they feel that ESL and DreamHack are going to make the game bigger, even though StarCraft went free to play. And all of that, maybe they think they're going to make it a bigger, a bigger game, and then maybe the future of StarCraft. That's kind of maybe what Blizzard's working on right now. They want to build as much hype and all of that. It's hard to say why they upped the prize pool. I'm not complaining. I mean, that's absolutely awesome, but I think there's a few things that might be going on here, because even though Blizzard isn't really doing much as far as the operational management's concerned, they're putting up the prizing for it, and they're really upping the ante when it comes to that. So that's something that we got to kind of keep an eye on. Because one thing I will say, guys, is that StarCraft is not a very monetized game for Blizzard, like some of their other titles, like Call of Duty. Even though Activision Blizzard, they're basically one entity, right? So Call of Duty, Overwatch, other games that they have within their portfolio are very heavily monetized. And I think StarCraft could be monetized. I mean, I would be okay. I would be fine with having monetization in StarCraft if it meant there was going to be a continuation of the franchise. That's just me personally, because I never really got sucked into all the microtransactions as some people have. But nonetheless, I think that having StarCraft, a continuation would be awesome, and maybe they're kind of thinking to themselves, maybe or maybe not, they're gonna kind of continue onwards with this franchise, but they're definitely upping the pricing, which is absolutely awesome. But we want to know from all of you guys, what do you guys think about the recent news with StarCraft 2? If you're a StarCraft fan, this is absolutely awesome. This is like a best case scenario, really, when you think about it, what could have happened and what actually happened. I mean, not only did we get a year confirmed of StarCraft 2 esports, we got 3 more years, guys, of StarCraft 2. And that's really something to be excited about. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. So Call of Duty, guys, a game in which, and a franchise in which I've talked ad nauseum on my channel about, one of my favorite franchises of all time, right? Just a game that, in series, that has been so consistent over the years, and it's quite remarkable what they've accomplished over at Activision, and with their different development teams making a new Call of Duty every year. A lot of times we think about it, and it's kind of something that you don't really think about much, but the fact that they have put out a game, AAA game, every single year, best-selling game every single year, and sometimes it meets people's expectations. Most of the time, as of late, it has not met expectations because it's just the community is so big and it's hard to please everybody. Well, in this segment, guys, of the show, I want to talk about the future of Call of Duty. What does the future look like, and what does the future hold for the Call of Duty franchise? So let's talk about it. So, guys, I've mentioned many times on the channel as to my history with Call of Duty coming in COD 4. Right, that's when I started in Call of Duty, playing the campaign, got into the multiplayer side in Modern Warfare 2, and then it was Call of Duty at that point every single year. Loved it. We had the amazing years of Call of Duty. So I'm going to speak for when I started to where we are now, and then of course, where I think we might be going. And I think that this is one of those conversations, guys, that we could have lots of conversations on, because I think there's a lot of different ways in which this series and different places that this series could go. So I believe, guys, and I've said this a number of times, so I'm not going to kind of, repeat myself, but I believe that there was a 6-year stretch. I think it was 6 years, probably like you had COD 4, Modern Warfare, you had MW2, you had World at War, you had Black Ops 1, you had Black Ops 2, you had, of course, MW3, and then Call of Duty Ghosts. So I would say about 6 years, okay? Because Call of Duty Ghosts, I don't really say that was necessarily in this 6-year stretch. I believe that 6-year stretch, I don't know if it'll ever be repeated in Call of Duty or in any game franchise ever again. It's a 6-year stretch that was, whether you like some of those games or not, it was some of the most remarkable games, whether you're talking campaign-wise, whether you're talking multiplayer-wise, whether you're just talking about, people being repeat customers coming back to the franchise and playing the games year in and year out. Or if you didn't like the title, you went back to the old ones. You went back to COD 4. You went back to Modern Warfare 2. You went back to Black Ops 2 or one of these other titles, whichever one you really liked, right? So those were the golden ages. I call them the golden ages, those 6 years. Then you had Call of Duty Ghosts, which, look, I'm not going to say Ghosts was terrible. I'm going to say that I liked the campaign. I thought the campaign was great, and I want to see a continuation of Ghost 2, or of the first Ghost. I would like to see a Ghost 2, which I've made a video about on the channel, which you guys can check out. But I would like to see a continuation of it. But all in all, Call of Duty Ghosts was kind of, people at this point, when we got to Call of Duty Ghosts, a lot of people were going back to the old titles. Everyone was going back to the old games, and people were like, we want change, and people were saying that over and over again. I'll never forget it. People in the Call of Duty community wanted change, and guess what happened? We got it. We got change, and it was definitely not what we were expecting, that being Advanced Warfare, and that being the Jetpack era, which I always called the dark ages of Call of Duty. Not Advanced Warfare, however. I don't say Advanced Warfare was, because at the time, if we're all being honest with ourselves and we remember correctly, we were all pretty excited about it. We were excited about Advanced Warfare. It was something different. It was like, oh shit, like, jumping 20 feet in the air. This seems pretty cool. And it was for a little while, and then it got kind of old, right? And we kind of went back to the other CODs. The problem, though, was that Activision didn't just greenlight one Jetpack game. They greenlit 3 of them. And so Activision greenlighting 3 of those meant that Black Ops 3 and Infinite Warfare would come and follow Advanced Warfare. And I believe those 2 games, even though starting with Advanced Warfare, led us into the dark ages of COD. A time in which, really 3 years, I would say about 2.5 years, that were just the dark times. It was just like, wow, people leaving the community. People absolutely did not appreciate like this Titanfall meets Halo and some kind of resemblance of Call of Duty within those titles. And so that's kind of where we were, was the golden ages. And then what happened, which was the dark ages, and then we get to after Infinite Warfare. We lose so many people in the community. There's a lot of people leaving the community. Still is the best-selling game that year. Then we get World War II. And then World War II led us pretty much into what I believe is the comeback, is really, in my opinion, the resurrection of COD. So it started with World War II. And even though it wasn't great, the campaign was awesome. It was back to boots on the ground. That's what COD was built on, was boots on the ground, gritty type of warfare. Then we got Black Ops 4. my opinion, one of the best multiplayer Call of Duties that we've seen in the series. Obviously, I always put Black Ops 2 number 1, MW2 number 2. Black Ops 4 was third on the list for me. And then we had Modern Warfare. Modern Warfare was the best campaign, in my opinion, that the entire Call of Duty franchise has seen to date. And it kind of stands right there with Black Ops 4. Two games that are, the only thing that Black Ops 4 lacked was a campaign, which really bothered me. But overall, I thought it was a great experience, nonetheless, because of Blackout. So those two games have brought us into basically the comeback of COD. Because I said this on a previous video, Call of Duty is back, and it's not even... the fact that people are still complaining about it is kind of mind-blowing to me. Even though Call of Duty, it's kind of just been a game that's been around for so long, it still feels like Call of Duty is definitely back at this point with some of these games. Now, the future of it, though. There are some people saying that they want jetpacks to come back. And I don't understand why people want to go back to that time period again, or want to go, kind of go back to that. I mean, some people say it's a fast movement. Some people just say that it's different again. I don't understand that. Now, the future of COD, I don't think they're going back to jetpacks anytime soon. At least I hope they're not. My thought process, and I'll bring Frankie into this, my process is that I actually think, and I've said this before, that the future of COD, to me, because they brought Modern Warfare, brought that out, but they kind of did a soft reboot of Modern Warfare, I think the same is going to be said for this year in Call of Duty in the form of Black Ops. I think it's going to be a soft reboot Black Ops. It's going to be Cold War, apparently, which is from the leaks. But that being said, we don't know for sure, obviously, what Black Ops 5 or what I think is going to just be called Call of Duty Black Ops, a soft reboot. And now that Sledgehammer is no longer a 3-year cycle, Sledgehammer's moved into Treyarch. They're now working with Treyarch, but they're doing the campaign, whereas Treyarch's doing the multiplayer of the new Black Ops game. I'm wondering if in 2021 we're going to see Modern Warfare again, but it's not going to be Modern Warfare 2 or like Modern Warfare 4 or something. It's just going to be Call of Duty Modern Warfare that we have right now, but they're just going to add things to it. And then they're just going to go back and forth, rotating between Modern Warfare and Black Ops, their two most famous sub-series of the franchise, and they're just going to go back and forth. They'll add things, whether those are expansions or whatever. That's one scenario. Another is that they just keep making Modern Warfare titles and Black Ops titles. Another would be that they say, you know what? Let's do Advanced Warfare 2. Let's do Ghost 2. Let's do these different changes. Or let's kind of change it up once again. But Frankie, you kind of see what's going on with Call of Duty. You've played Call of Duty for a number of years now. What do you think the future holds for the franchise? Do you think we're going to keep getting... Actually, before we even get to that, what's kind of your brief history on COD, and where do you think it's going now? And what would you like to see? Would you like to see a rotation between Modern Warfare and Black Ops? Would you like to see kind of changes, like new IPs within the Call of Duty sub-franchise or sub-series? What do you want to see, and what do you think the future holds for it?
Yeah, so I guess just touching on some of the stuff as far as your history, I just kind of was thinking a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I feel like I'm in the minority who thought Ghost was pretty good. Mainly campaign-wise, I think its multiplayer had a lot of issues, and that's why it's mainly looked down on. But I'm always surprised to hear how terrible people thought the campaign was. It's always... Oh
no, that is a disgrace. It's absolute blasphemy. The campaign was great. I would love to see a continuation of it. You're right about the multiplayer. The thing about the multiplayer was there was really only one or two maps I enjoyed. I liked Strikedown, I think was the main one I really liked. It was okay, but it just didn't meet the expectation of what we thought with Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops 2 in titles like that. But I agree with you. I think that the campaign was was great. And the ending, I mean, like, talk about a cliffhanger, dude. Like, the very end of that campaign, it was like, I want to play, I want to see where this goes from here. You know what I mean?
Yep. And if I'm not misthinking, it also like it was that cliffhanger, and then it was like Eminem came on with just an amazing track.
Oh, dude,
That
I
was the
forgot
credits,
about that. Yeah.
and it
Yep.
was just like, oh man, I felt so. It was like such an epic
Yeah.
finish, I thought. But yeah, so I've been looking forward to that, and I really hope that they at least kind of try to wrap up. I mean, you don't kind of leave a cliffhanger like that without wrapping up sometime. But I mean, who knows? Because my thing is, I'm gonna kind of tangle things up here because as far as the future, I would like to see just like a new title, something out of Black Ops and Modern Warfare. Um, Obviously, a Ghost 2 would be awesome, but even just something completely original. But yeah, as far as other past stuff, I think you kind of hit everything like that. Those were kind of the best games in that 6 year span, and then they kind of got off of the boots on the ground, which I think sometimes they just like developers want to change things up, they want to evolve. I mean, you could probably say the same thing for Halo. You know, once they started adding armor abilities, and that's kind of stayed in through the series since Reach. You know, so I think that they want to try to evolve it, but they kind of move too far away from the core of what it is because when I think Call of Duty, I want a fast paced run around, you know, killing the enemies real fast, you know, doing a bunch of stuff just really fast paced on the ground. And I get that like the jetpacks and movement were fast, but it's just not the same. You know, if I wanted to do that, why wouldn't I go play something like Titanfall, which in my opinion is far superior? Those games are so underrated and they should be so much bigger. And I hope when they release a new one, if they do, that EA does it justice because they sort of messed with Titanfall 2 by releasing it with Battlefield at like the same time. Um, but
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
so
on that note, before you move on, I mean, do you think, even though, like, just really quick, off topic, but the Titanfall, since you brought that up, do you think Apex Legends would help Titanfall sell better? Like, do you think that Titanfall, even though Apex is, technically, in that same universe, because of the success of Apex, do you think it would make Titanfall? Do you think it's helping Titanfall get bigger, or do you think it's just because it's a free to play game that it's got pretty good viewership? It had really great viewership for a while. I would love to have gotten into Apex. I just was not good at the game at all. But do you think it would like help Titanfall get? Do you think it's helping it grow that fan base, or do you think Apex is just kind of separate totally from Titanfall?
no, I think that they're gonna intertwine it. I think it's gonna help it a lot. I mean, I've actually heard a few different people who said they never played Titanfall, and then they go over and they're like, "Holy crap, this is the same gun I've been using in Apex," because they are all the same guns, and they feel the same. And I mean, most of the game just feels the same. The movement and everything. I mean, obviously they're a little different, but uh, yeah, I really think that it's going to help that game, and I really hope that they kind of push that because, like I said, I don't think if you want to do jetpacking and wall running and stuff like that, I think Titanfall. If I want the absolute best experience, and I mean they even made ways to not have to use Titans, like it was just like a pilot versus pilot, so you kind of had like what I'm getting at is I could see people saying, "Oh, like I don't want giant mechs in my shooter." Well, they kind of had a way to not do that. But um, back to Call of Duty, uh, I just think as far as the future goes, they should probably try to do some new stuff. I think they should stick to boots on the ground, in my opinion. I hope they do. Another thing with Call of Duty that I would like to see is them find a way to streamline their battle royale. Because first of all, I just can't believe we still don't have a Modern Warfare based map for Call of Duty Battle Royale. And I really think they screwed up by not making Black, oh, sorry, its own standalone that they would update or add maps to. Um, because now they've sort of separated it, and I really don't know what the future is. And the thing is, you might say battle royales are kind of on the downtrend, but I really think there's always a place for it. And I also think that you do something like a Modern Warfare based one, and you're gonna get a lot of fans of that to play. Like I like Blackout, I like Black Ops games, but I love Modern Warfare games, and just I remember the map so vividly in Modern Warfare. I want to run around in favela, in a big giant map and stuff like that. So I hope that they kind of find a way to streamline that. I mean, you look at all these other ones and they have microtransactions. I just feel like they should have a standalone, and whether the studios just cooperate with each other or what, I don't know. But that's just kind of on the side. I hope they do that. And then, like I said, stick to boots on the ground. Try some brand new IP, not IPs, but like brand new names, brand new ideas for COD that don't bring you into the future and jump around and stuff with jetpacks, but at least kind of give you something. I mean, there's just so many possibilities. It's just hard to imagine that we keep getting Modern Warfare and Black Ops. Let's see like some sort of evolution in the storyline. And then I don't know. Hopefully, they just kind of stick to that boots on the ground, streamlined gameplay, and I'll be happy because that's what I want when I get on a Call of Duty game.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on it. I don't agree with you on the Titanfall. So, I mean, do you like Titanfall more than the Call of Duty franchise? Is that what you were saying? Or you just like have like a better experience playing Titanfall than COD, like overall? Because I mean, for me personally, I don't think that there's any comparing a Titanfall campaign to a Call of Duty campaign. I mean, especially after playing like Modern Warfare. Now, maybe some of them, weren't that great of campaigns, but Titanfall certainly. I'm with you on that. It's been a it's been a very big missed opportunity. I think that they're making up for it with Apex, because when we look on places like Twitch and just overall popularity of Apex, I mean, it's bigger than, as far as viewership is concerned, than Call of Duty and such, like on, some of these streaming platforms, which is a pretty big, that's a pretty big deal. Do you think it's because of the quality of the game, or do you think it's more so because of it being free to play?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's just the battle royale genre. Um, but yeah, as far as Titanfall, I guess to clarify, I just mean, well, first of all, the first Titanfall didn't have, I mean, its campaign was basically multiplayer, co-op
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
true.
thing. But the second campaign was actually one of the best campaigns like in any game I played. No, I'm not saying like beats the best COD ones, but I'm just saying as far as the Titanfall experience, if I want to play with jetpacks and that sort of thing, I would rather play that than go on COD and have jetpacks. When I get on COD, I like a certain experience. So it's like get on COD, I get this experience. Titanfall, I get that experience, and that's pretty much what I meant.
Okay, I got you. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm with you on it. I think that you hit it on the head as far as the boots on the ground. I think that that's really important, because I agree with you. Like, I think that Vince Zampella, that was his thing. Like, look, he went to Titanfall, and I understand that, the fallout between him and Infinity Ward and Activision, but it doesn't sound like it was very pretty. But nonetheless, he goes and does his own thing, and apparently there was rumor that he wanted MW3, Modern Warfare 3, when he was over at Infinity Ward still. He wanted that to have jetpacks and wall running and stuff. And so when he went over, he, of course, the fallout that happened between him and Activision, and Infinity Ward, he got Titanfall made, and Titanfall, there you have it. That's basically, was his Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3 that he wanted to make, except it was Titanfall, and obviously a different universe and such. But then Call of Duty or Activision decided, well, let's do something like what they're doing because it's kind of grown a little bit in popularity. So they decided to make Advanced Warfare. Now, obviously, I'm stating that, guys. I'm not saying that that's definitely what happened. Like they were thinking, oh yeah, we definitely have to copy what he's doing. It just kind of felt that way. Did you feel that way too, Frankie?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought, oh, they're looking at that. They think that's how it needs to evolve. And I mean, honestly, what you said is true that they wanted Modern Warfare. He wanted Modern Warfare 3 to be like that. I guess I don't know how I feel. I mean, I suppose he would have done it really good. I feel like because if it ended up like Titanfall, then sure. But I guess if I went back, I probably wouldn't change it. I like the fact that he went and made Titanfall as a separate thing, and COD stuck to it how it was. Or well, obviously they added new stuff, but I guess it's hard to. You kind of blew my mind there. Now I'm kind of thinking, what if he would have made?
Well, dude, that's the thing, dude. That's my biggest thing on on the 8 Below show is the what if factor. Like, what if like one thing would have happened? Because I mean, no, I mean you were saying earlier, Vince is a dude. He's a real. I think he's really starting to show that he has got true. I mean, like just he's got a real vision for what he wants. He's starting to kind of, in a way, a different type of way. He's kind of he's reminding me of like a even though Hideo Kojima does things, you know, has very different types of worlds that he creates and things like that. Vince is kind of reminds me a little bit of those ambitious kinds of projects, but he also kind of reminds me of like a Kevin Feige, who was he's the basically the head guy over at Marvel, who essentially was the one who put together the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it, and we all know how good that looked from Iron Man to where we are right now. It's absolutely unbelievable. Vince Zampella, even though I'm not going to go as far as to say that he's like a Kevin Feige in the video game industry, but I'm going to say that this guy has created some incredible projects up to this point. Any game that he creates or has his handprint on at whatsoever, I'm definitely going to be checking those things out, and there's just no debate about that. But with that being said, guys, we definitely want to hear from all of you. What do you guys think the future of Call of Duty is? You think we're going back to the jetpacks? Do you think that we're going to be, you know, futuristic back in the past? Do you guys think that we're going to be kind of alternating between Modern Warfare and Black Ops? Do you think we're going to have some new stuff come in? Or do you think we're going to have some of those old fun titles like Advanced Warfare and Ghosts? What do you guys think? Let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear your thoughts. Okay, guys, so with this segment, I wanted to talk about StarCraft 3, which is something that I've been trying to get the StarCraft community behind, to get a StarCraft 3 echoed into existence for a number of reasons. You know, one, to continue the legacy, the lore of StarCraft. Two, to just, you know, continue onwards with more StarCraft. When we look at StarCraft and its history, there's 10 years in between each of the StarCraft titles at this point, and a StarCraft 3 would give us another 10 years of StarCraft. And obviously now, with the recent announcement that Blizzard made about StarCraft 2 esports, that being a 3-year deal with ESL and DreamHack, does that mean that they're essentially saying that StarCraft 3 is not being made at this point? Because the Pylon Show, which of course I've talked to a lot of you before about the Pylon Show, which is put on by Artosis, who does a really good job. It's everything StarCraft over there. You guys should definitely check out his show. But he spoke on there after the announcement came out about ESL and DreamHack, kind of having the StarCraft 2 Pro circuit for 3 years. He stated that, well, obviously, StarCraft 3 isn't being made at this point. And I just want to respond to that because I actually think that that may very well be a false statement, simply because Blizzard might be handing the reins over because they need more people on deck to make a StarCraft 3. We all know that StarCraft Ghost, a first-person shooter StarCraft game, was canceled a number of years back, and just this last year, there was a untitled StarCraft first-person shooter game that was also canceled, and it was reported by Kotaku. But that being said, guys, this is what I want to say. Obviously, Blizzard cares about StarCraft because they made not one, but 2 first-person shooters. Now, obviously, those were canceled because there was rumor that they wanted more people to work on Overwatch 2. But what I'm saying is that StarCraft is still in the back of Blizzard's mind. It's also probably in the mind of Activision's as well. So, here's the thing. I believe that a StarCraft 3 is still very possible. Now, will it happen as soon as what I was hoping? Like, I was thinking maybe it would get announced this year at BlizzCon. Maybe not. Maybe it's something like Blizzard is now, they're kind of, divvying up their people between projects, whether that's Overwatch 2, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, or, whatever project it is, right? But there might be some people that they have working on a StarCraft 3, at least like some initial concepts. Or maybe we are going to get a StarCraft first-person shooter. Look, the way I look at things, when we look at franchises, I look at things in terms of, a lot of people say, well, look, StarCraft can't be a first-person shooter. It can only be a real-time strategy. I say that is false. Like, what needs to happen is in order for some franchises to continue and to stay alive, sometimes you have to go in different directions. So I'll give you an example. When you look at, there'll be multiple games that have come out in the past, right? That are, that kind of start as one thing and then they kind of evolve to something else, right? That being like Command & Conquer. If you look at Command & Conquer, this was a game that's a real-time strategy, but they also added a mobile version. Sure, it was also somewhat of a fast-paced real-time strategy mobile game, but it still was on a different, device or a different console. The same can be said for, something like StarCraft. In order to continue building the legacy, the lore of a franchise, sometimes you have to think outside the box. So what I mean is a StarCraft first-person shooter is only going to continue building the fan base of StarCraft. Might be a lot of first-person shooter people coming in, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The real-time strategy genre has never been as big as that of the first-person shooter genre, unless we're talking over 10 years ago when StarCraft 2 first came out. Now, that being said, guys, I think that a StarCraft mobile game, a StarCraft first-person shooter, a StarCraft 3 real-time strategy game would absolutely build upon the legacy and the lore, the story of StarCraft, because I look at StarCraft like I look at Star Wars or Star Trek or some of these other, sci-fi fantasy games where there's multiple planets, there's multiple worlds that you can visit, and there's so much to learn about the game, and that's why I love StarCraft so much. But I'm okay with there being other ways in which I can connect with the universe, whether that be, just on my mobile phone, or if that means a first-person shooter on a console, or if that means another real-time strategy as far as like a continuation of StarCraft. And are you really going to end it with StarCraft 2? You're not even going to complete the trilogy? I don't know. That's why I just feel that with the recent announcements that Blizzard is still working on something. Maybe it's not StarCraft 3, the real-time strategy. Maybe it's something StarCraft related. But something is telling me that a StarCraft 3 very well might be closer than you think. And that being said, Frankie, when you, after, we kind of went over everything that Blizzard had announced, as far as, partnering with ESL, partnering with DreamHack. What are your thoughts on just franchises in general, maybe going away from what the roots of them are? Like, For example, a game in which, say, it's been on PC for all these years, and then all of a sudden they make a sequel and it goes to consoles, or it's a new mobile game, which we saw the backlash from, like Diablo, for example. Everybody wanted to see the next Diablo announced, but they got Diablo Immortal announced, and there was a ton of backlash behind that. My answer to that was, just to give you an example, I made a video about this talking about how I don't think that it was necessarily like a bad thing that they announced Diablo Immortal. It was just the way in which they did it. They didn't announce a new Diablo game that was going to continue the main story. All they announced was Diablo Immortal, a mobile game with no Diablo 4. So my thoughts are that those things, though, Diablo Immortal is still going to build upon the legacy of Diablo. Like, it's not going to, why would something like that hurt the franchise? It's just going to add more ways that you can connect with the franchise. It's just the way that they announced it. But what are your thoughts on this? Like, do you like games that kind of expand into multiple areas? I mean, even talking about Call of Duty, it expanded into, mobile devices, and you can play on your mobile phone now. What are your thoughts on that? Do you kind of like some games doing that, or would you like to see more franchises expand upon what they're kind of working with? Like, if they're only on PC, do you want them to kind of move to consoles and kind of, in a world in which everything is kind of becoming cross-play, or a lot of games are at least? What do you think about that? Do you want to see more games start to kind of start finding new ways in which you can kind of connect with the franchise?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to change things up, to bring things to mobile. I personally love the idea that I can take on my phone and try it. Like, I don't know, like for instance, something like Dauntless. Now it's not out on mobile yet, but like that's a game that's going to be completely cross-play for mobile players, console players, PC players. And I really like that idea that I can get on and do something quick, or if I want to sit down and I'm just not at home, I can do that. And like Diablo, I'm super excited for it. But you're right, as far as the way they packaged it, they should have had it this year. They should have announced Diablo 4. This is what's coming, showed the gameplay, and then be like, and also we have this mobile game coming out. And the other thing with the Diablo game is that it's still not out on mobile. So why did you announce it to your hardcore fans who play on PC, so early when it's not even in sight yet for mobile? So they really could have waited, and then there wouldn't have been an uproar. So I think it's just weird there, but I do like the idea of them expanding. And tons of franchise. I mean, look at Halo. Halo is a first-person shooter that made Halo Wars an RTS game, and it's made a couple games. That's awesome. They're actually some of my favorite RTS games. Um, but yeah, I really think StarCraft itself could be a mobile game, and the reason for that is because in the early years of like iPhones and touchscreens and stuff like that, uh, GameLoft made a game called Starfront Collision, which was basically a clone of StarCraft, and it was a real-time strategy that you could control your units like a StarCraft game. It wasn't like soaked down all the way. It was a pretty authentic RTS, and they haven't supported it. It's been dead forever. But I always remember that when I think of StarCraft on mobile, and I think, oh man, they really could make a great game on mobile. And I get that, like, some people want to go with, like you said, Command and Conquer, that bite size experience, which I understand. But at the same time, you know, if you really want to stay true to the franchise, in some ways, there's nothing wrong with making longer matches, or like maybe you just have smaller maps or things like that. But I personally think the Command and Conquer is a little too restricting. I don't mind it, but it's very simple. Like, there's only a couple platforms to move to. So I don't know, but yeah, I'm all for franchises expanding and moving into new things, new platforms, new genres, as long as they do it right. And like I said, I mean, in some cases, make sure you kind of promote it and announce it the right way. You know, no one wants Halo to come out and say, yeah, by the way, Halo Infinite is a mobile game, you know.
Oh my
But if
God.
they, on top of the, if they said, here's Halo Infinite, but also we're bringing a Halo mobile game now too, that would be fine. It's just, be smart, especially because people are touchy with mobile, even though, you know, a lot of people play on mobile just because you and me grew up in a more traditional sense on consoles and PCs doesn't mean that all this newer generation, hasn't been doing their phone, and that's just unfortunately how it is. So we kind of gotta they have to find a way to please everyone, but unfortunately, the future is mobile and being able to play in more ways. So
Right. And I agree with that. I mean, the Command and Conquer thing, see, they got it wrong too. Like EA, they announced Command and Conquer Rivals, but didn't announce a true sequel to Command and Conquer. So they made the same mistake that Blizzard did, which, I think that if you do it right, it's gonna just, I mean, people, the hype is gonna be real. And so with Command and Conquer, I actually enjoyed the mobile game for Rivals. I thought it was kind of fun, even though, like, yeah, it's very simple, but it's just, it was kind of fun. I mean, it's not one of those games that you play like a ton, but it's just another way in which you can kind of interact with the Command and Conquer, universe and such. And the same can go with like a StarCraft if they were to do that. If they, of course, Diablo Immortal is going to be that for the Diablo franchise. So yes, absolutely. I think that there's multiple ways that we can, see StarCraft, or really a lot of different franchises, kind of expand upon what they're currently doing to, to give more ways in which we can, as consumers, as fans, to be able to kind of connect with those games even more. But I would love to hear from all of you guys. Do you guys think that a StarCraft 3 is secretly in production right now, and with those recent announcements that happened, or do you think that means that a StarCraft 3 is actually definitely not happening anytime soon? I would love to hear from all of you guys. Let us know in the comment section below. Okay, guys, so for our last topic of the day, we're going to be talking about some console wars, and we're going to also just talk about the recent announcement that happened, that being the PlayStation 5 officially being announced, and not much being revealed other than the logo. And we're going to be talking on the flip side of that, the Xbox Series X, and our thoughts on who wins the next generation of consoles. I'm not really going to be talking much about the Nintendo side of things, even though the Nintendo, of course, they do a phenomenal job as far as selling and marketing their product as well. But there's always been this tension, this kind of weird type of Star Wars versus Star Trek type of mentality between, you kind of have to pick a side. You're either an Xbox guy or you're a PlayStation guy. You're a Star Wars girl or you're a Star Trek girl, right? You're kind of one or the other, and the other side just kind of hates the other. Now, I think things over time it's kind of calmed down a little bit. People, just in general, consumers, myself included, and I know Frankie's the same way, we own multiple consoles. We own the Xbox and the PlayStation and the Switch, and basically just own everything, right? That doesn't mean, though, that we don't have our preferences. That also doesn't mean that we don't know the facts. And when we bring up the facts, we know that up to this point, the PlayStation, pretty much, I would say, since probably the PS3, maybe even the PS2, but definitely the PS3, has significantly outsold that of the Xbox consoles. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that the Xbox console is inferior. That also doesn't mean that the PlayStation is really that much better. But what we will talk about here is who's going to win this next generation, because up to this point, PlayStation has been pretty dominant when we talk about the PlayStation versus Xbox war that's been going on, even though both sides, Microsoft and Sony, have a lot of respect, obviously, for one another. I have reason to believe that there might be a change in what's happening from what we're seeing. It's kind of like that eye test. And when I use my eye test on the Xbox Series X at this very moment, obviously we haven't seen much on the PlayStation 5. Just leaked images and a lot of memes on it. But other than that, really haven't seen much, guys, from the PlayStation side of things. So this is somewhat premature that we're talking about who's going to win the next generation. But I never think it's actually too early, because holiday 2020 is right around the corner when you really think about it. That being said, though, Xbox Series X, and the reasons in which I believe that there's a possibility that it could reclaim, or I guess you could say it could claim the throne against PlayStation, is for a couple of reasons. And it even goes down to the design of the console. If the design of the PlayStation 5 is what has been revealed to us through leaks, and it looks like, okay, let's kind of go back here, right? When we think about PlayStation, we think about Xbox, right? The 360, the PlayStation 3, PS4, then you had, of course, the Xbox One. Xbox has a very clean look to it. PlayStation has had, over the course of time, it looks relatively similar to one another, and they also kind of seem more of like a, not like a play toy, but kind of like a, just a little bit different. Not as slick, not as clean of a design. The PlayStation, however, though, has had features about it that are really great. But the Xbox, when we talk about just the design of it, Xbox, and I have a prediction that I'll make right here on the 8 Below Show, that the Xbox is making a significant approach, and they are taking a serious look at competing no longer with the PlayStation, but with PCs in the future. Now, I have a theory, guys, that the Xbox, and maybe even the PlayStation, at some point or another, we're going to be able to customize them to how we want, like you can a PC. Just look at what the Xbox looks like. The Xbox Series X looks like a tower. It looks like it looks like a computer, okay? And when you look at that, and you look at the design, they're taking a more professional approach than that of the PlayStation. Now, we haven't seen the images of the PlayStation 5 as of yet. We've only seen leaked images. So that's what I'm going based on right now. But the Series X, obviously the specs and things of that nature, they're not there yet against a PC because you can customize the PC. But when is it going to happen that we can customize our own Xbox? We can buy that Xbox Series X or whatever it is, and we can customize those things ourselves to compete with that of a PC. I'm telling you it's coming, and it's closer than you think. I made a video talking about the console versus PC war is closer than you think, because you got a company in Microsoft. They're making an aggressive approach to compete against PCs. They really are. And it may not seem like it, some of the specs, they're not quite there yet, the frame rates and all of those. But really, I don't think that this next generation of console, war, I feel like Xbox is going long-term on this. Like they're trying to win the long-term war, whereas PlayStation may very well be trying to win the battle, which is going to be coming up here in 2020. That being said, though, I do think that PlayStation, there's a number of reasons why I believe that PlayStation has kind of outsold the Xbox. And I said this, I've said this before, that PlayStation, when everyone else was, when we were picking between Xbox and PlayStation, lots of people just picked, right? You kind of just picked which one you wanted to get, and a lot of it was sometimes like the Xbox exclusives. Like for myself, when I got the original Xbox, I got Halo 1 and Halo 2. Those were only on Xbox, right? I remember PlayStation had Resistance, which was a game that was only on the PlayStation, and Killzone and Killzone 2 only on the PlayStation. And so you kind of had to pick and choose which console you wanted. I picked Xbox. I ended up getting a PlayStation eventually, but started with Xbox. And once you did that, you kind of realized that, and you kind of looked at the different, obviously you look at like specs, but you look at just how clean and how easy is it to kind of maneuver around everything, and what kind of exclusives are you getting, and there's a lot of that obviously that goes into it. But one thing that PlayStation had on Xbox was a free multiplayer experience. The Xbox experience was $9.99, I believe it was, per month, which wasn't like it was breaking the bank, but you still had to pay for it. I believe PlayStation built a huge following and a lot of people buying the PlayStation during this period of time, because I remember a lot of people that I used to play Xbox with that switched over because it was free to play, even though the Xbox Live experience was far superior to that of the PlayStation Network. Now skip ahead a couple of years, guys, and we basically have still the same type of ordeal, right? But everyone has their own feelings about the Xbox or the PlayStation. Not really like you're just picking and choosing. It's like, no, I've grown up with this. So there's a difference. Now, the PlayStation 5 is going to sell very well, and there's no debate about that. But Xbox is taking a very serious approach. I don't know if it was, 10 different studios that they bought out, and they now have the most exclusives that are going to be coming to Xbox ever, and they're working on a lot of those games right now. PlayStation, on the other hand, doesn't seem to have as many exclusives, not that much to show, skipping out on E3. There's a number of reasons why. Something tells me Xbox is really taking they're taking a grasp of their destiny and control of what they're trying to do. And so now they're going to E3, and with PlayStation not going, not that that's like that's going to make Xbox sell better, but it's more opportunity to show more people what's going to be coming out on Xbox. And the Xbox Game Pass, by the way, is brilliance. It's brilliance in the making because of a subscription service that you can download all these different games, Xbox exclusives or not Xbox exclusives, and download those games, and PlayStation still trying to catch up in areas like that. PlayStation still has great titles: Death Stranding, God of War, Spider-Man. They've got games coming up like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2. Lots of great games. But when I compare it, Frankie, when I compare these these two consoles and the console generations that have been kind of leading up to where we are right now, I don't know. Like PlayStation has some great, exclusives. But Xbox got some pretty good ones too, and I know one that's going to be coming out later this year in the form of Halo, which people are saying that this is about to be a resurgence of the franchise. Not to mention we're having Gears of War, and they've already announced that Gears 6 and Gears 7 are going to be coming out at some point in the future. You've got all these other exclusives that are going to be coming out. What do you make of this console war that has been going on, the war, quote unquote, that's been going on now for a while? Did you grow up an Xbox person? Did you grow up a PlayStation person? How did you kind of pick or choose between which one you wanted, and what kind of made it just like, what got you to like one of the consoles or another, and where do you think each console, like the direction they're heading in right now? Because maybe we're all missing something with PlayStation. Maybe they've got this massive plan, to somehow take over holiday 2020, whatever that might be. But what are your thoughts on it? What do you think between the Xbox Series X, the PS5, your history with the consoles up to this point, and where do you see this next fight going?
I grew up with basically all of it. I played on the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, got Xbox, like you said, for Halo and Halo 2. And it's like you said with Xbox Live, it was just such a superior service. I mean, when I was playing Halo 2 on Xbox, there was basically nothing like it on PlayStation 2 or just anywhere else. To be honest, like that was the multiplayer like shooter that everyone played because there wasn't I know there was a network adapter that I had for the PS2 to play like my ATV Off-Road Fury game on. Uh, but that was about it as far as online. And maybe I think I tried SOCOM, but it was just a real bad experience. Um, and yeah, then at that point they kind of both uh, had me hooked, and they both had exclusives that I kind of wanted to play, and I just kind of went with them. But it was the Xbox Live that kept me more on the Xbox side, and that's why I prefer Xbox. And I just think you talk about this current gen. Unfortunately, the leadership at Xbox, I don't think was there. I don't even think Microsoft was as all in on Xbox as it is today, and they just came out with the wrong messaging. They came out with a system that was not as powerful as the base PS4, and it took them so long to kind of work their way up to get some games out. And unfortunately, PlayStation just did everything right from the get go. First of all, they added all those kind of Xbox Live features that weren't available on PS3, right from the get go on PS4. Then they just had all these hard hitting games, Last of Us, God of War, stuff like that. And unfortunately, you can't. It's so hard to compare their exclusives because Microsoft does kind of have that good, like, I am not going to say just good, great campaign, but also a very heavy multiplayer focus where you really don't get that on PlayStation. What first party PlayStation game am I going to go play multiplayer? Like, honestly, probably nothing. If I'm going to play something, it's going to be a third party Call of Duty or something. Where you look at Xbox, there is Halo, there is Gears of War, and I just think that they're two different things. And the other thing that people kind of overlook is PlayStation's been around longer. They have their foot in different regions like Japan where Xbox can't make it, and they have so many sales from all these different regions that really Xbox doesn't have a foothold in. And we've heard Phil Spencer talk multiple times about getting a studio like in Japan, and I really think that's going to be their biggest step towards maybe getting Xbox to grow bigger. Uh, Granted, they're doing tons of consumer friendly stuff now, like Game Pass, like you said, is so awesome. I mean, the fact that you can just, even if you just want to try some of their first party games for a month, I mean, first of all, I can't remember the last time they haven't had the deal where you get like 3 months of Game Pass for $1. But even if it's full price and you have to pay $10 for a month, and you could go in that month and play all their first party games, I mean, that right there should influence people to buy it, just to get the experience of all those first party games. I mean, they are good. No, they're not these like epic single player, open world games like PlayStation has, but they are really good. So I don't know. I just think Xbox kind of stumbled, and now they're kind of back on track. And I think it's a semi even footing. The only thing is PlayStation does have such a huge install base, and I think it's going to be easier for people to be like, "Oh, I'm a PlayStation person. I play with most of my friends on PlayStation. Now I'm going to get PlayStation 5." And unfortunately, that might mean that Xbox kind of loses sales. But I think also for them, like looking forward, they're more into the services. They care that you're playing their games, whether that be on PC or Xbox. And then hopefully in the future, XCloud becomes a bigger thing that they can sell as a service, and hopefully get people who can't afford consoles but have good enough internet, can just buy their games digitally. because they're still making money on it. So I think they just have different visions, but it remains to be seen just because we don't know all the specs and the price points. But I feel strongly that Xbox is not going to screw up the launch of this new console because they know they've learned their lessons. If anything, I think they're just going to be on par, if not a little better than what the PlayStation has to offer. Um, but yeah, it's going to be an exciting year.
Yeah,
And
no, I'm with you though. What you said about how, and it's so true. When you look at PlayStation, they've got great games, but a lot of it is just pretty much a campaign experience, a story experience, and they sold very well. Like, we're not going to take anything away from that. God of War sold super well. Death Stranding sold really well. Spider-Man sold really well. I'm sure The Last of Us is going to sell really well, even though I think Last of Us might have multiplayer. But look, I don't know about you, Frankie, but for me, personally, when I go to buy a game, I like full packaged games. And when I say a full package, I like a game that's going to give me a campaign. It's going to give me a multiplayer. It's going to give me even other things like like if we talk about Call of Duty, like a Spec Ops or like a co-op modes or, zombies, horde mode, so on and so forth. Things that are going to bring you back to that game. I think it's such a disservice not to have multiplayer pretty much with any game because that's what brings people back to the game. Even though campaign, sure, there's going to be people who come back and play the game, a few times over. There's something about multiplayer. And something about having a full package deal, especially when we're talking about spending $60 on a game. You want to have a full experience, like just a full package experience. At least that's me, and I think I can speak for a lot of people that want a full package experience. That's what Xbox is giving you right now. I'm not saying PlayStation's not doing that, but at least their exclusives are, they've got a different vision for what they want to do with that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but Xbox has taken a really aggressive approach here with the multiple studios that they bought out, the talks of multiple other games that are being greenlit, like, a new Fable and just, all these different games. Halo Infinite coming out later this year. People are saying that this is a real resurgence for that franchise. People who are close to the project are seeing that. Like, I think it's going to be closer than people think. I do. And I agree with you when, something that people don't realize is that, yeah, Sony has a big following elsewhere in other parts of the world where Xbox, even though it's Microsoft, you would think that they would be all over the place, but they're not so much. I think Xbox is trying to figure it out, though. And Xbox Game Pass is definitely a step in the right direction. And I think that there's a multitude of other things that are going to help Xbox to compete. And I think it's closer than you think, guys. But of course, once the PlayStation 5 specs and things of that nature come out, I'll keep you guys all updated as far as when that information is revealed. And that being said, though, guys, I want to pass it on to all of you. Who's going to win this next generation console? Do you think it's going to be the PlayStation 5, or do you think it's going to be the Xbox Series X? And which console do you like more? And what do you guys think about that? Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to have a conversation about it. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And guys, I want you all, before we close out here, I want to pass it over to Frankie. I want him to kind of give you guys a couple of ways that you can connect with him. And I also want you guys to do me a favor, and whether you hit me up on Twitter or in the comment section here on YouTube, let me know what you guys think about bringing Frankie back onto the show, having him as well as other, personalities on the show. I think it's really important to have multiple opinions on different topics and having other people to like bounce ideas off of and have someone there that really knows a lot about gaming and has a lot to add value to. So let me know if you guys want to see Cruiser back on the show. We're kind of in the early stages of adding people onto new personalities as well as recurring people onto the show, and obviously with Frankie being the first one. Frankie, how can people connect with you?
On Twitter, you can follow me at Frank Cruiser. Other than that, that's pretty much the main way. But as far as if you want to see what I'm working on, just follow the Twitter. I'm hoping to get back into Xbox podcast I've been doing for a while in the coming month or so, and I'll be on that talking about all the Xbox things if you're a fan of that. Otherwise, on Instagram, you can follow Pokey.pax. It's a side project I'm working on if you're a fan of Pokemon trading cards. Just sort of deals with opening new packs and kind of nostalgia of the older days of Pokemon trading cards and stuff like that, and kind of the little passion projects I have going on there. But otherwise, yeah, follow the Twitter, and that will lead to everything else.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on to the show, Frankie. I do appreciate it. Hope it's not the last time. And like I said, guys, definitely check out Cruiser. All this stuff is going to be in the description of this video. And I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive. And as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.